Hey guys, welcome to Financial Story Hour, where we dive into relatable financial stories to empower you to change your own. Remember Joe and Katie from the last two videos? Joe couldn't cut his expenses enough to outpace his low income, and Katie couldn't conquer her spending habits despite having a high income. Now, there are still two aspects of cash flow we need to look at before we get the whole picture. And I think some of you can relate to Derek, who had an altogether different problem. And so, with that said, it's story time.
I just don't get it. I have my budget all laid out. I follow it. When I hit my grocery limit, I stop. When I hit my eating out limit, I stop. It's only when those unexpected random things happen that I bust. The problem is, every single month, it feels like something happens. I should have had my emergency fund done by now. Maybe even a credit card paid off. In February, I did my taxes. I must have miscalculated because I owed a few $100s. March, I had a flat tire and the shop said all of my tires needed to be replaced. April, my sink backed up and I called the plumber. I'm trying so hard, but there's just no progress. What am I doing wrong?
Now, I can absolutely relate to Derek. I often experience this exact same thing. And if I were coaching Derek, I would start off just putting my virtual arm around his virtual shoulder and addressing that self-accusation, because for most of us, most of the time, it's not, what am I doing wrong? The question should be, what don't I know yet? And truth be told, I didn't really grasp this concept until recently, and it completely changed the way that we handle these things in our marriage and in our finances. And it's incredibly simple and powerful. Now, when many of us think about budgeting our expenses, we think about the things that we can pull up in Rocket Money and see on a monthly basis. Think electricity bill, gas, water, subscriptions, things that are predictable and regular. But there are some things that are no less certain just because they don't come every single month. So what's the answer? Well, sinking funds. Now, I'd heard of sinking funds before, usually in the context of saving for something that you want over time. However, there are those expenses that we know are coming, we just don't know when. And for those things, I think sinking funds are not an optional part of your budget. For example, experience has taught me that we're probably going to be changing some tires on our cars within the year. Now, if I kind of estimate 4 tires for a year and $150 a tire, that's $600 divided by 12. So I need to make sure that $50 is going towards saving for the inevitable expense of tire replacement. Another example might be Christmas presents. Rather than waiting till November to realize that this is coming up and throwing everything on a credit card, try planning ahead and just try to come up with a number that's reasonable, that again reflects your values, and take that number of how much you think you're going to spend on presents, divide it by 12 or 11 to try to get that number that you need to be saving monthly. Think car and house repairs, all these things. Just remember, it doesn't have to be exact. You're not going for exact, but being prepared and setting aside something is so much better than just waiting to let these things hit you in the face. Now, you can make this as simple or detailed as you want. When we first started out, my wife and I just had 2 savings buckets, and that was a needs and a wants savings bucket. And so every month we have an automatic transfer set up for a specific date for this amount of money to go from our main checking account into these savings buckets. Now, I mentioned Christmas presents earlier. That actually might be a separate bucket that we set up altogether. So you can experiment with this and decide how detailed you want to get with it. You can have separate categories for everything and different buckets for everything, or you can just have needs and wants. I think you'll find that financially you weather better, relying less and eventually, hopefully, not at all on credit, but instead being able to address these things and take them in your stride when they come. Derek has done the hard work of learning to live below his means, and he's developed the discipline, but he needs to take the extra step to more accurately identify his monthly needs. And to that end, I want to address some of the things that you might be thinking about now. You might be saying, well, okay, that's a great idea. I will start doing that when I pay off X or when I reach Y. And while you can run this lean, I do think it's important to go ahead and get at least a needs sinking fund started, even as you're working towards your goals, even if you're still paying off debt. Just a little bit set aside to smooth out that ride, because the truth is, if you're like us and you're trying to aggressively pay off debt and then something comes up that you weren't prepared for and it has to go back on credit, that's very discouraging. And so I hope that you'll consider setting this up and at least, like I said, running it lean for a little bit. Look, when my wife and I first started implementing this concept, we started setting money aside. That very first month, we had to call a plumber twice, almost back to back, because of issues with potty training our toddler, and I'll leave that to your imagination. The point is, our first month doing this, we didn't have enough to write it out strictly from the needs fund. We had to dip into our actual emergency fund. Now, again, it doesn't matter how much you know, something like that is very discouraging. And so I had to hold on to the hope and the belief that, hey, if this had happened a couple of months from now, we would have been able to weather this without even missing a beat. And sure enough, just a few months later, after we were able to rebuild up a little bit of a foundation, we had other issues come up. We had to put tires on the car. I was able to pay for all of the tires out of this fund because we had set it up, because we stuck to this idea of having a sinking fund for our needs. And it's continued to help us walk forward without stumbling so much, without having those ups and downs, that roller coaster feel of success and then, oh, something derailed us. Guys, this is powerful, and it needs to be a part of your financial system if you want to see more frequent wins and less of those roller coaster ups and downs. If you're ready to develop a money management system that allows you to put your finances on autopilot while you focus on living a life of purpose and impact, then I hope you'll reach out. There's a link in the description below for a quick Q&A call, and I would love to hear your story. But if that's not you and you're not ready, then I would love if you would go ahead and hit the subscribe button, if you would hit the like button on this video, because I'm going to keep bringing my best every Tuesday here for you guys, because I believe in the idea that there is plenty. And so I'm not going to hold back. I'm going to give my best stuff here on this channel. And I hope that you remember that your story is not written. You can change your story. And so with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Now, I'd heard of sinking sun. Hey, we're gonna have to start buying presents live on less than he makes. He just needs to take the extra step down in the description to have a quick Q&A code.